Hey, it's Christopher O'Brien again. It's day 2 here at the International UFO Congress. And this is turning out to be the most successful Congress ever. We're going to go inside now and talk to some of the participants and find out what they think about the previous location in Laughlin, Nevada versus this year's location here outside of Scottsdale.
Other than this is more out in the open, not so crowded, doesn't have all the hectic traffic and so forth, congestion that the other had.
This event for virtually 20 years has been 7 days long. This conference this year, you've brought it down to 5 days, and I think it's better. I think it's still long enough for folks who are coming from around the world.
It's a beautiful location, for one. It's isolated, for two, you know, and that allows you, although it's still close to Phoenix, you can draw from Phoenix, but it's isolated. And that allows you to isolate your thoughts and just concentrate on what's here. Part of what the conference is to me is a cadre of people that feel are like-minded. So in many ways, you learn as much from the people that are at the conference as you learn from the speakers. The speakers are not irrelevant, of course, and this year's speakers are some of the best slate that I've seen.
Just like Lawrence said, we've had the cream of the crop of the speakers this year. Let's take a look at some of the speakers' presentations and excerpts from interviews that they gave Open Minds.
What does this thing do? Well, it can actually warp the fabric of space-time, both forwards and back, and you can actually see the probabilities of future events. That's the primary function. However, there's a secret to the looking glass device, which Dan Burrish has told us. What you can do is you can flip this device up at 45-degree angle, and if you tune it to a slightly different frequency, it can be used as a stargate. So it actually has a dual purpose. You've got these spires or guide rings just above the looking glass device. These are used to guide the electromagnetic field over the looking glass device. It's something that you can hit with your hand. Now, per Dan's comments, there was a 3-foot-tall statue of an Alice in Wonderland rabbit. He had a maroon vest, he had golden fringes, and he had black buttons. He was holding a clock, and this is symbolic that you're going down the rabbit hole into a world that's beyond belief, and that's exactly what happens in the looking glass area.
Never had a sighting. And I actually think that's probably a good thing. Given the role that I'm playing with all of this, is that it, you know, gives me more ability to stay sort of objective. And I mean, I know, like we were saying, how life-changing a sighting is. So if I had one of my own, you know, who knows what would happen to me? Would I lose some kind of objectivity? Would I don't know. So I'm actually, as much as I would love to see a UFO, you can be sure of that, I think it's probably been better that I haven't. Because sometimes when I'm interviewed by people, they do ask me that, and I think if I said, oh yeah, I've seen them, it would affect people's perception of my role as an objective, analytic outsider, you know, looking at this as a journalist. So there isn't that personal involvement with the phenomenon. I don't have any of that.
And I want to quote you something Charles Fort said some years ago. He says, it's the cold, hard data that confronts us. There are facts we cannot deny. I think we are property. I believe that someone or something owns us. The planet is owned by someone else. Charles Fort said that in 1925. So why intelligence analysts like myself appreciate the man and respected him. It's amazing how accurate he was in some of his disclosures. Okay, there's another quote that I want to run by you. Now, this one is from our favorite Nazi, Werner von Braun. Werner said in 1959, and this was quoted and published in the Chicago newspaper, "We find ourselves faced by powers which are far stronger than we had hitherto assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. I cannot say more at present, but we are now engaged in entering into closer contact with these powers.
It's the most amazing treaty or document that I've ever seen, and I've been working in the Congress and with treaties, the United Nations, in the revolving door game of the military-industrial complex for so many years. And I started the movement to keep weapons out of space. So I was involved in a lot of the legislation related to that too. But we started a protest movement with about 50 million people, and it didn't work. We've been uncovering cover-ups and it didn't work. And it dawned on me and a handful of friends, high-level friends, that we needed something new. And that's what this treaty is. This treaty, for the first time in history, will not only call for a ban on space-based weapons, and there have been other treaties that tried to make that happen too, in pieces. But this treaty is the first one that ever acknowledged the cosmic cultures, the off-planet cultures who we know are here. Some of us has been visited, but it's never been acknowledged in an official document. And it also acknowledges the indigenous cultures. They will be parties to this treaty. The cosmic cultures and the indigenous people, as well as the nation states who sign the treaty, will all be parties to it. And then the nation states, of course, are the ones who sign the treaty itself. Which is why I said this is so stupid when I hear that people in different countries, and the Russians know better, want to work on missile systems. What? Article 6, the provisions of this treaty that ban all space-based weapons shall apply to all nation states, whether or not they are signatories to this treaty. And we have ways. Okay. The treaty shall enter into force upon the signing and ratification of just the first 9 signatory nations. This treaty is open to all nation states for signatures. If they don't sign it, they can come into it at any time.
But I think the point is that societal resilience is perhaps something we should be considering, both as individuals and as societies. I think we are able to handle big news. And there are a number of reasons for that. I think it would take a social scientist maybe to get into the technicalities of it. But I mean, you know, just on a personal level, there will be few things more profound to individuals as, for example, getting married, having a child, or losing a loved one. And yet, you know, we do deal with these things, some better than others, many people in different ways. But, you know, I know it's an awful cliche, but life does go on. So I actually think we'd be interested, we'd be thrilled. If it turns out that we've been lied to, we'll be a little bit annoyed, but, you know, it won't be the great paradigm shift that some people say.
It means its mother wasn't human. It is a pure D alien. Well, excuse me, that's a little strong. It is human-like, but it is not human. I have been cautioned by the geneticists to say, rather than say the inflammatory word alien, to train myself to say human-like rather than alien. But it's not human. This is another random fragment. Our geneticist has dozens. In this one, 545 star-child nucleotides are compared with 562 human nucleotides in a gene. Excuse me. In this close-up, I went through 150 comparisons and quit marking at 15 variations. Several more are below the green line. You see, it becomes repetitive. Everything he threw up at me, it was again and again and again. It's overwhelming, the evidence here. But it's partial, and it's not going to be accepted because of that. But it is real, and it is legitimate.
For all of our efforts, for everything that we've been able to demonstrate, for all of the documentation that if one just actually takes the time to look into the historic record, if we're correct, it changes everything overnight. So we're talking the biggest story of the millennium. But if we're wrong, it doesn't change anything. You know, the world goes on, the status quo, is maintained and nothing's changed. The difference, though, in dealing not with the skeptics, but dealing with those who would label us as being the fringe minority, being the kooks, being, you know, relegated to a single shelf within a bookstore that you almost have to look over your shoulder, make sure nobody notices that you might be pulling a book off of that particular area, is that if they're wrong, and for all of their damage control, these useful idiots that have made it their life's mission to character assassinate, to destroy the witnesses, destroy the messengers, destroy the message, if they're wrong, who is guilty of the greater crime, at least in my eyes, for having deceived the public, deceived the masses, deceived the world for all these years? And it's a constant challenge I will raise with a healthy skeptic.